Thank you for joining us on the From Wounds to Wisdom podcast. This is your host, Barbie Moreno, and today I have Courtney Thomas with me. We will be talking about igniting your holistic transformation for a life unbounded by limits. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining me, Courtney. I'm really grateful to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So there is a lot to your story. So I kind of would love if you just kind of give us a basic summary, like a very short summary of your reason or your purpose, and then we'll go deeper into the stories if you don't mind.
Yeah, the reason grew up in Chicago, multiple incarcerations during my youth, during my 20s. And it just came to a point where I didn't want to live the lifestyle that I was living anymore. I really didn't know how to change, what avenues to take. But I found a path, and that's why I'm here today. I want to help other people to kind of climb from that dark place, wherever they may be, to a place where, they're living their full potential.
Love that. And you go a route that I'm very familiar with, which we'll get into. Your route is actually very similar to my route. And I believe that it's one that is the most authentic, in my opinion. But, everybody has their own way to do things. But give us an idea of what started like your youth and how and what ended up getting you into situations where you were incarcerated.
Yeah, so drugs and violence were the reasons why was incarcerated. I would say, we always hear that cliche, like product of your environment. Grew up around a lot of violence in the projects, and that's what I was seeing on a day-to-day basis. I really couldn't say where my, anger started, but in fourth grade, I was suspended so much in school that it came to a point where I was about to get expelled. So my mother decided to just kind of make a decision to send me to an all boys military academy where I stayed there during the week and kind of came home on the weekends. It was outside of Chicago. And so that's kind of the beginning of the anger things that was happening. By the time, 18, 19, got into drugs, started selling drugs at that time. And then again, my incarcerations were for injury to a police officer, drug related. And so when that anger came up, that emotions, I really didn't know how to control it. And it came out as violence.
So there's like so many multiple layers to that, right? So obviously we know what happens to you when you're younger often leads to a projection into the world of how you see it. And then
Yeah.
you're taught how to live in that world, right? And so you said in fourth grade you were in trouble quite a bit. May I ask if you were like a product of a single mother or were there things in the household going on? Like what was going on when you were younger?
Single parent household. My father had moved away. Probably when I was, I don't even know, 2, 3, somewhere around then. And household was honestly great. That's kind of where my solace was. My
Hmm.
grandmother, my mother, both lived in the household with me. So I grew up around women, only child. So I was always like loved and nurtured. Just when I stepped out into that environment outside of the household is where I started to see the things around me, which played a part, I'm sure.
Right. So at home was good. And then you go out into this world that's basically probably mean to you, judgmental to you, probably unfair in a lot of different ways, I would imagine. And so you don't want to be there, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then military school, like I could not imagine. We've seen like, I think there's like a Netflix documentary, I think it's on Netflix of like these schools and the stuff that they do to these poor children. Like, what was that like for you?
So honestly, I didn't think my mother would do it again. Like I was the only child. I think she, like looking back now, I think she made the best decision just to kind of get me out of the neighborhood that I was in.
Yeah.
Um, I was probably angry
Yeah.
about that, about being somewhere where it was unknown to me and I had to stay there during the week. I remember it kind of being a good environment
Oh,
where it
that's
was
good.
people that was there that I, still friends with today, long relationships that were made. I just didn't all boys, military, away from home.
Mm.
Those are the things I would say probably bothered me the most and kind of had me rebelling a little bit, I would say.
So it wasn't like what we've seen on some of these documentaries where they're like, do abusive things and stuff like that. It wasn't that kind of a school.
I did not have that experience at all.
Okay. That's good. I mean, that's obviously because the trauma that those people went through was absolutely crazy. Do you feel like in a military school environment that you were allowed to express your emotions?
Yeah, I would actually say yes. The school probably did wonders for me. I would say it did. I couldn't imagine probably growing up like all of that time in Chicago
Right.
every day going into those public schools, especially like the high school environment. I think it was the best decision that was made. I was just rebelling from inside for whatever reasons those may have been.
Do you think it has to do anything with your father leaving when you were younger?
It could be, but my dad came back when I was in fourth grade. So right when I was starting the transition of going there, that's when I kind of started building a relationship. And it was rocky at first because I really didn't know him.
Mhm.
But since then, he's been my rock, honestly. He does everything for me whenever I've needed anything. He's the main reason why I do have the business that I have today. He
Nice.
always supports, everything that I'm doing, and I'm grateful to have him as a father in my life. And now I have a 1 year old myself. And so just to kind of give that back to him, what he gave me. It was just relationship issues with him and my mom at the beginning. So it had nothing to do with like me or his, who he is as a person. And it is what it is.
Right. So you go from what seems like a relatively decent home, you go into a military environment that doesn't sound like it's traumatic, like we've heard from other people in different schools. So then what? Because from that to incarceration is a big leap.
Yes. So at 16, so I was there from fourth grade, whatever age that is, until I was 16. I didn't want to be there. Like I was starting high school. This was my sophomore year now. So we stayed there still during the week, but high school was outside of the campus.
Mm.
And I liked the high school that I was going to, had still good friends and stuff there, but I didn't want to be in the military school anymore. So my dad helped me to get out. And then when I got out, my mom said, if you're going to stay out, then you still need to go to the high school in, where you were instead of coming back to Chicago. And so I was kind of transitioning from Chicago to about an hour away outside every day to go to school. Started seeing more things, that I wasn't accustomed to seeing because I was kind of boarded away
Mhm.
for those years and got into drugs, mostly cannabis at that time, smoking at first and then selling. Went to a small town after high school where I started getting into violence and drugs. And that's kind of how the thing started
How do
downhill
you
for me.
how do you go from, because like still a big leap, right? So how do you go from somebody who, so what started the use of cannabis? Was it just like, let me try this? Did somebody like talk you into trying it? Like, where did that come from?
People in the neighborhood were doing it. I didn't have that while I was still in school, but once I got out, I felt like I wanted to try it myself. And when I tried it, I liked it. And so it just kind of came from a point of using cannabis a lot to selling it to support my habit of using.
Mm.
Um, that kind of, I guess that would say how it started. And then a friend of mine introduced me to a small town that was outside of Chicago, probably like an hour and a half away from there now, where it was good money that was being made. And so I went and took that route. I was in school for DeVry. So when I left high school, I went to DeVry, computer analyst. I thought I would enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy it at all. So I quit that and I started working at the University of Chicago Hospital for about a year. Um, Radiology technician. Really didn't like that either. And it was kind of like this rebellion aspect that was happening. And so I went to that small town, um, having fun, selling drugs, doing those things at that time. And I ended up catching a case. And then shit wasn't so fun anymore.
What does catching a case mean?
I end up getting set up with an undercover officer.
Mm.
At that time, I was actually selling crack cocaine. So I got caught with an ounce of crack. And that gave me 6 years. It started, they were talking 6 to 30.
Mhm.
I was 20 years old at that time, not even 21. That end up going from 6 years is what I end up convicting me for. When you get 6 years, you do half of that. So that's three. I end up going into a drug program during my first incarceration, which every day that I did, I got a day, 2 days that I did, I got 1 day off. So that broke it down to about 2 years. So I ended up doing 2 years during that first incarceration.
And so were you also doing crack?
I was not, no,
Just
not in
selling?
like in my neighborhood, that wasn't something that we did. Cannabis was a thing. But when I went to this small town, predominantly white, that's where the money was. And so that's what I ended up bringing from Chicago and taking to the small town.
Do you think that your, and this might be touching, you can tell me to leave it alone, but do you think that your race had anything to do with your like sentencing or any like convictions or any treatment? Yeah, I
For
would
sure.
imagine so.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're not convicting the people who are buying it from you, right?
Correct. I mean, it was a lot of people, black people that was coming down doing those same things. And, the judges and the lawyers, that's their kids that, probably are being sold to. So they're taking it hard on black people, Mexican people that was coming in and doing those things for sure.
Right. And I have some friends that grew up in Chicago and they talk about the stories of Chicago. And, I know that there's some harsh parts in Chicago as far as like, territory and drugs and things like that. And I know you didn't have to actually live in that a lot of your time, but then returning back and seeing all of that, I would imagine is quite a shock to the system and also easy to get back involved in, I would imagine.
It was real easy. It was the easy. I mean, you said like, how did it all happen? If I can't really pinpoint like a place and time. Um, Friends that were in that lifestyle, hanging out with those people, then that's how I end up getting back involved. So,
Right. Could you imagine if you didn't get out of there to begin with?
um, don't want to imagine that.
Yeah, it'd be
Don't
a
want to
problem.
imagine
Okay.
that.
What does mom and dad say and grandma when you get arrested?
Oh, it was devastating. I mean, my dad, he's a father, he's a male. So he's like, told you shouldn't have been doing these things. I knew what you were doing anyway. My crushed. I mean, I remember her in the courtroom and having to see her. And then maybe while I was fighting that case, that was probably like 30 days
Yeah.
before I'm getting that incarceration. She lost maybe like 20, 30 pounds just
Wow.
going like depression. And that was probably the worst part for me, to be honest, is like saying my mom, I'm her only child. They didn't raise me to be this way. So to see them going through that, and then they supported me the whole time while I was in prison. They came once a week just to see me, make sure I was okay, but still having to see them once a week and still like be in this place. That was the worst part for me.
And was prison a place where you, it's kind of a condescending question because I already know the answer. Is prison a place where you can reform and get better? Is it supportive of your rehabilitation?
No, not really. I mean,
Right.
the place that I was in, I was grateful, honestly, to be there.
Yeah.
I
And this
remember
was a
somebody
drug rehab?
it was like a yeah, so it was some like it was like a rehab where we had meetings every day. I remember someone telling me when I was going through like shipping and receiving, like if this your first time and you got a drug case, that's what you should try to go to. Like
Mhm.
you'll be out of your cell most of the day and you'll have this good time that you're getting and all this stuff and different stuff. And so I'm grateful that I was able to kind of go through that. It took a year off my sentence and I wasn't like on 23 and one lockdown all the time. So
But even the fact that they call it shipping and receiving in and of itself shows that there's no value in a human life, right?
most definitely.
Yeah.
You're a number, that they get money from, and they really don't care what's going on, while you're there. They're do your time, get out so the next person can come in.
And so that's incarceration number one. Then what?
Incarceration number two happened actually during incarceration number one.
Mm.
Um, So I also got a chance to do work release during that time. So I did my first year in prison. The second year, about 9 to 10 months of that, I end up doing in a work release center. So work releases, you get able to leave prison, you go to kind of like a rehab place. You get to work every day. And if you work, then you get to go home on the weekends.
Mm.
And so this was in Chicago, west side of Chicago is where the work release center was. I did great there. It was much better than being in prison. It got to my last 2 months, and the job that I had, I was working at Goldblatt's, I'm pretty sure. They laid off. And in order for me to continue going home, I had to find another job. Only job that they were giving out was like waste management. And I did it for maybe like 4 days, and it just wasn't cut out for me. So I'm like, I'd rather just kind of sit my last 2 months in the center than to like work at this place. It was like drug needles and all type of stuff that was coming through the assembly line. And it's just something that I didn't feel like I wanted to do. So I went out that last day of work. I didn't go to work that day. I ended up going back to the small town where I was with the girl that I was with before then. I ended up getting like pissy drunk and found out some things that I really didn't want to hear and caught a domestic violence case. So I slapped her on the highway. She got out, started running, and someone called the police, and that's how I got picked up. I didn't get any extra time, thankfully, for that. She didn't like press charges or anything like that. But what happened was they made me finish my last 2 months out back in shipping and receiving, where I was on lockdown pretty much every day, all day. I got to come out once a week for a shower, and they brought the phone to me once a week. So that was my last 2 months of my first case. But that was the second
Offense.
conviction that I got. Yeah.
So how does somebody who's raised by women, who had like a relatively decent life, smack a woman? Like, where did that come from?
Something inside. It's the anger thing. Like my third case, which we'll get to, was an injury to a police officer. So it didn't matter who it was or what was happening. It was this emotion, which I think of as energy in motion.
Right.
Something was trapped. Energy channels was what I've been able to learn throughout my journey, where energy is not processing how it should. And so once I get angry or upset, it comes out as violence, whether it's a woman or the police officer that I injured, it really didn't matter.
Mm. And so then you go back, you have 2 months in basically almost like solitary, right? Because you can't really leave.
Yep.
And you get to come out to woo shower once a week, whoop-dee, right? Like, so what's that like?
The worst time that I've ever had throughout those three convictions. You're in a room that's uh, very small. You're in there with another person. And then because it's shipping and receiving, it's multiple people coming through over a 8 week period.
Mm.
Um, you're pissing, you're shitting, you're eating with those people every day, all day. You shower in the sink. Um, you have very low quality food because it's shipping and receiving. You're not getting like commissary, like you don't have TV, you don't have anything. You're
Mm.
just in this cell with yourself and someone else for 8 weeks.
And
Very
it's
depressing.
different people coming in and out, so you don't know your safety, right?
Yes. Yep. It was inhumane.
Mm. And have you ever done any work regarding like the prison systems? Is that something that is important to you in any way, shape, or form?
It is. Transcendental meditation actually is something that's been introduced into prisons.
Mhm.
It hasn't been my part of my path yet, but it's something that I would like to um, maybe do as charity. I do have a nonprofit organization as well. Just trying to see how to fit that all in and make that, a reality.
Mm.
I do work with children, like young adults, juveniles, as a mentor for children that have been through the system or are currently on probation, different things like that right now. So that's the most that I've done.
Well, and that's a lot because people aren't working with them,
Yes,
right? So that's a big difference. Changing one person changes the world. Changing multiple people it's a butterfly effect.
it's true. And, what I've found is that I'm easily relatable to them where other mentors that they've had, may not have been through this life experience or may not know where they're coming from. And so I found that it's it's been easier for them to kind of open up more to me.
Right. I roll up in there. I'm a white, blue-eyed, strawberry blonde. They're gonna look at me like I'm a nut job. I come from Orange County, California. They're gonna be like, "You have no idea, woman." Now, let me say, I didn't grow up in Orange County. I came from Lancaster. But anyways, it's not the same, right? I'm not gonna. They're not gonna instantly connect with me. They're not gonna think I understand where they've been because I
Yeah.
don't. Right. Let's be honest, I don't. So let's go to the third incident.
So I got out, and this was 2006 when I got out from those two charges. I I went back to that same town. Wasn't getting into any trouble, wasn't selling, doing anything like that. I was working. I had a job at a steel mill, and then 2 years went by. The recession happened. It's 2008, and steel was definitely not keeping workers. So I ended up losing my job, and I got back into selling drugs again.
Mm.
Um, and that led over 2 year period. I wasn't selling myself. Other people were doing it for me. So I didn't get in any trouble for that. But the police they knew who I was. They knew me from the past. They knew that it was still me that was kind of orchestrating things. And so they tried to come into my house in 2010. This was September, August, somewhere around then. And I ended up fighting with them. Broke one of their wrists. Then three other ones came in. They maced me, and I got a resisting arrest with the injury to police officer, which is kind of like the lowest class felony. So I ended up having to do 2 years. At that point, I just was depressed. I felt like I had more potential. I had to see my mom go back through that shit again.
Mhm.
It was heartbreaking. And I just didn't want to live that lifestyle anymore. Didn't really know which way to go. Um, and the girl that I was with, she introduced me to a substance called MDMA.
Mhm.
Um, and didn't like it wasn't part of my neighborhood, didn't grow up, didn't know anything about it. But she was like, because you're in this place, I think it'll help you. I mean, now in Colorado, they use that for mental health or psychological things like mind altering substances, psychedelics, they're called, whatever. But I had an experience that was beyond myself, I would say. I felt like God was speaking through me. And
Mhm.
I felt like I needed to like once I woke up that next morning, I knew something had shifted. I didn't know really what it was. I didn't have religion when I grew up. I never went to church, didn't have a relationship with God or creator or anything like that. But
Mhm.
at that time, I knew that it was something that was shifting. And so I spent that last time, I got a year for that. I spent that year just saying, I'm going to see what this is. Started kind of reading the Bible during that time, going through Bible studies, in prison, things like that. And I remember this verse that came across. It was John 14:12. Jesus, this is the red letter. So he's saying, very truly, I tell you, not only will my disciples do the works that I've done, but they'll do greater things. And I mean, I'm in prison for the third time, so I can't say that I actually believed it to be truth, but I had faith. Something like convicted me inside when I was reading this. And I'm saying to myself, like, I'll just make this prayer. Like, if you are who you are, then just guide me. And then there's no place I won't follow. And so that was kind of like the beginning of my transformation, from inmate to living the way that I'm living today.
Well, and so what you just spoke of is what it takes to let go of the ego. And that is the part where you say, take me, I'll follow where you guide me, right? That's the part that gives it to a higher purpose, a higher being, and says, I'm not in control. Like, I will be your disciple or whatever. I will be your, I call it a conduit. That's what I call myself, as a conduit. I will be your conduit. I will
Yep.
do the work that you want me to do. I don't know what's best for me. Please guide me.
Yep. That's the place I was in. I knew that what I was doing was leading me to nowhere. I'm in prison with 50, 60, 70-year-old people who've been there 10, 12 times, same shit, same results. I didn't want that to be me. That could not be me. I knew I had more potential. So um, that was the prayer. And that's how it started for me.
And it's funny, should you have not have had the experiences you had, should you not have done the MDMA, well, one, you probably wouldn't have been reading the Bible, but two, you wouldn't have seen that verse because you weren't ready for it.
Correct. So like people ask me about psychedelics in my opinion and things like that, where it's something I don't do now.
Yeah.
But if it was like, if that was the catalyst that I needed that other people may need to bring an awareness that there's something greater than yourself,
Mhm.
then I support it. I do. I do support that. Yeah.
So talk to me about, so you had MDMA, you get out, and now what?
Yeah. So I did the MDMA. I actually went in
Where you went in and then got out.
and got out. It switched. Then, so when I first got out, I was still, I'm not going to lose the church, and I started going to church and kind of doing those things. But it got to a point where I felt stagnant, and so I have like this inner voice that I listened to. I felt like this was Jesus speaking to me. That he's saying, I said that I would follow wherever it is, and what I was hearing, if I'm looking at like the scripture part of it, like God is within. Like this is the temple of God, and if I really want to create this intimate relationship with the creator, then I need to find ways to purify this temple. And so I started kind of searching or seeking ways to go about that. And what came to me was yoga. And like I didn't know anything about that at the time. Wasn't a part of our community. And definitely didn't think that this is where I would be led from like Christian scripture, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I decided, I would just try it. I ended up going to like Barnes and Nobles, I think it was. I got a book. It was like an 8 weeks moving towards balance. I think that's what it's called, Rodney E. And I was just doing it at home, like going through the process every day at home. And I started feeling better. Um, it got to a point where I was like, I feel good about this. So let me explore like going to a yoga class. So I went to like the local gym, Lifetime Fitness, started doing yoga classes there. Really felt good about it. And like I'm about authenticity. So like the teachings were saying like you should also be doing this for meditation. Like yoga is just a mean to get the body right for the mind during meditation. And so I didn't know anything about that at the time. I remember seeing something from Oprah Winfrey. She was doing these 21-day meditations with the guy named Deepak Chopra. I didn't know who Deepak was. This is like 2012.
Right.
But I knew Oprah, so I decided to try it out. And one of them was called Perfect Health. And I was like, well, this is kind of what I'm looking for, like this body. How do I obtain this? And he was like, Deepak said, like, if you want to experience it, come to the Chopra Center. And it was for like a 10-day cleanse. This was my introduction to Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a system of healthcare from Eastern India. And that's what I did my bachelor's degree in later on down the line. But that was my first introduction. I didn't have the money to go to it then. Expensive process.
Yes.
And so I put it in my intentions. 3 years later, it became a reality. And then that's when like a major shift happened for me.
So before you get there, I want to go back because for somebody
Okay.
who's been in this process, I get it. For people who have not been in this process, they're like, yoga, really? So, I mean, it's funny because yoga is what started my saving too, right? So there's just something about the connection and the flow with the body and all of these different things that the way you move and all of these because I feel like we're so disconnected from our bodies, right? For the
Yes.
most part, we live in our head. Our bodies are just like a transportation vehicle to get us where our head is telling us to go. And so when you're doing these practices, yoga, you do meditation, and you're doing an Ayurveda and things like that, you're now connecting with what is our temple, which is our body, right?
Yes.
This is the gift that we were given so that we could exist during the now, right now. And we have to connect with that and we have to be in it, not just be in our head. And so like people laugh at yoga all the time. And when I talk about yoga, people, oh yeah, 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 you look like a yogi girl. You know what I mean? And it's just like, no, it's not about that part of it, right? It's not like the going and doing the fun, stylish, hip yoga. It's the connecting yoga, right? Totally different, right?
Totally different.
And then the meditation and all of those different things. One thing that you said in the very beginning was that you believe emotions is energy in motion. Have you read Michael Brown's book, The Presence Process?
Have not.
So he says that exactly that, right? So if you're ever interested in an amazing book, it's Michael Brown's Presence Process, and he describes emotions, and he says the same thing. And emotions are just basically energy in motion, or energy not emotion, because we clog the energy, right?
Right.
Which is where the anger comes from, the all of the depression, the anxiety, and things like that.
True.
And then you talked about manifesting, or you said you put it in your intentions, but you manifested basically. You got to go to Deepak Chopra's thing. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
What was that like for you? Because it's a different world, right?
For sure. I mean, like the beginning, I'll just say like, because he was teaching the yoga parts of it too. That's why I actually got interested and I wanted to learn like his yoga methods and meditation, but I didn't know Ayurveda. I didn't even really know what that was. I didn't know what I was really going for.
Right.
Um, you mentioned something before. I'll just kind of say like, I remember kind of mentioning to my uncle like that I was going into this route of yoga. And
Yeah.
he's like big Christian. So I wanted to get his opinion. And he's like, that's the devil's work.
Hmm.
And just like people in my life didn't know what I was doing or why I was doing it. And so I kind of had to first kind of keep those things inside,
Yeah.
instead of just letting everyone know what I was doing. Let me see what's happening for me first,
Hmm.
and then I'll kind of bring these parts out. But I ended up going to Chopra Center. This was in 2015. It was it's a system of healthcare again, but the detoxification process of Ayurveda is called Panchakarma. And so Panchakarma is where they're using herbalized oils and specific massage techniques to break down toxins that's caught in the tissues, depending on where you're holding a lot of these blockages at. And over a 10-day period is what I did. Then those toxins are moved towards the digestive tract, and they use a different type of oil and herb, kind of like an enema, they call a basti, to release those toxins out of the system. And so that's the process that I went through. You're also doing yoga during that time and meditation as well. But this is what I found that opened up those blockages or those energy channels to let me process my emotions clearly. And I remember like 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, something like that, my wife saying, like, you're just not this angry person anymore. I
Mm.
was like, like nothing's really changed, but I've added this aspect in of this cleanse. And so I started doing, like, he also gave what's called a daily Ayurvedic routine. And this is things like tongue scraping, oil pulling, abhyangas, things like that. Times a day to wake up, times to go to sleep that match the nature's rhythms, because really what you're trying to do is align yourself with the rhythms of nature, with the laws of nature. And when I did that, what I found was that life became more efficient. I was more effective at what I was trying to do, and I was putting forth less effort. Things were just kind of manifesting for me without me having to put so much into it.
Hmm.
And so that's what made me really take a look at Ayurveda as a system, and why I adopted my whole principles kind of to that. So I did that over a 2-year period. I continued to have like magnificent results, both inner and outer. And then it came to a point where I was like, I want to teach this for other people, give this back to other people. So that's when I also heard, when I was at the Chopra Center, that him and Oprah was learning a lot of these things from a guy named Maharshi Mahesh Yogi.
Hmm.
And he founded Transcendental Meditation back in like the 1950s. He had a university in Iowa. Deepak was there. Oprah was there. I was seeing like, Oprah talk about this on her own network, Life in Fairfield, Iowa, or something like that. And she was like meditating in the domes. And I was like, man, this feels like the place that I want to be, hearing this inner voice. I wanted to go in 2016, right after I did the Chopra Center, but timing wasn't right. So I ended up enrolling in 2018, started Transcendental Meditation, really dived deeper into the knowledge of Ayurveda. And then life really began that outward approach. Like I had already been getting the inner things,
Hmm.
but this is kind of when the business started to develop. The financial aspects got really good, and things just kind of really changed for me from there.
So, the Chopra Center, was it the one in San Diego that you went to?
It was actually in Carlsbad.
Okay, in Carlsbad.
Yep.
And for people from Chicago who are growing up in the world where this isn't even something that's talked about, right?
not at all.
How do we get this? Because I mean, this is my work as well. I do energy work. I think I saw you have, are you a Reiki master? You do Reiki or you work with energy?
I have Reiki practitioners here at the spa, but I use Himalayan singing bowls
Yeah.
to do most of the work. Using light therapy with gemstones, how to shine light through gems for energy balance, Marma therapy, which is like a similar to acupuncture. Most people can relate more to that. They're called acupuncture points. We call them Marma points. Instead of using needles, we use touch and consciousness
Mhm.
to unblock those things. So those are like the three main things that I use for energetic work.
Yeah. So how do we take somebody who, I mean, you at least had a mother who wanted to get you out of the Chicago lifestyle and any inner city type of lifestyle, right? But I mean, even the people who are thinking that they're living wealthy lives aren't really living life, right? So but I'm more concerned about the people who don't have any privilege and who don't have the funds. How do we get it? And this is like a big question, right? But how do we get it so that this becomes something that's more normal and that they're not looked up as like wussies and like, all of these things because they want to get in touch with their inner self. Have you ever like thought about that?
I mean, me going through my personal transformation on a personal side,
Mhm.
like people want to see like that they want to see your transformation on the outside.
Right.
So example for like my mom, my dad, my grandmother, they all practice meditation now, like I've taught them. Just at the beginning, they didn't understand it at all. They, questioned me, what am I doing? My mom's just kind of happy I haven't been going back to prison. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And now I have those wellness spa, people see the prosperity. And so that I believe opens eyes of man, this guy was just in prison. Now he's doing these things.
Right.
Maybe I can take a look at this. Like for me, it was Oprah, so
Mhm.
it's for me, it's about me going through my own personal process, my own transformation, culturing a message to give back to other people that, I was here. It might not be a physical prison that you're in, but a mental prison, a prison of, depression and fear and anxiety. And these are the things that I've used to help me. So they see this, maybe they might be more intrigued to try. On the other side, I think it's a science part of it because that's what mainstream wants to see, especially when we're talking about like healthcare. I think if that's where it needs to get into the healthcare system, Medicaid, where it's being paid for through government, nurses, essential workers, police departments, fire departments, schools. And once the government gets involved, that's when I think more people will be more accepting of these things. Transcendental meditation, I've already had like scientific studies where doctors can prescribe this for people with high blood pressure and see that it's being reduced. Only technique that's been, certified for doctors to give out as like a prescription. But it's still like phase 3 studies that they would have to go through in order for Medicaid and those things to pick those parts up. But I think that's the big piece. That's way bigger than me, but my personal story and my personal transformation and my personal message is where I'm starting with it.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is that you have all of the lobbyists for like the pharmaceutical companies who don't want you to go within and find inner peace and stuff because then how would they sell their shit? Like if you're healthy and happy because you would be physically healthy, right? You no longer have all your physical ailments and then you have your mental happiness and yeah, that's a whole different story. But
Uh,
tell us, I know what it is, but a lot of people don't. What is transcendental meditation?
yeah. So I mean, I've done many techniques during from 2010 or 2012, kind of that's when I started to where I am right now. I was on a journey of seeking. So that whole time when I started yoga, I've done many different types of yoga, the fancy stuff and this stuff in the gym and workout, all these different things. But again, I'm about like authenticity. Um, and it got to a point where I was hearing that the things that are being offered are more mainstream. Even Deepak Chopra side. That's why they really didn't stick with his meditation aspects. But it's a simple, natural, effortless technique where you're using a mantra. A mantra is a sound or a vehicle to turn the mind within. And for me, it was like going back to scripture. seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be handed on to you, added on to you. And where's the kingdom? The kingdom of heaven is within. And so I'm trying to find a technique to bring the mind or awareness within to this kingdom so that all of the things that I now have was just kind of added on to me. And so that's what I noticed TM as. Again, we're aligning ourselves with these laws of nature. And if you think of like a piano, A note, B note, C note, these are like the primordial sounds of nature. And when you're using these sounds, then it helps the mind to kind of let go or transcend um, sensory perception, everything that we're always looking at, hearing, seeing, touching, so on and so forth, and bring that awareness inward. And so, simple technique that you sit, sit comfortably. It's not something you have to sit, back straight, stiff, knees, legs this way. Breath technique where you have to focus on the breath. It's different types of meditation. Three main, you would say, like concentration based, where you're concentrating on the breath or concentrating on something. A mindfulness technique where you just kind of let the mind go on whatever it is that you're bringing in, and then transcending. And you can tell, like, they've done all these different studies through like brain wave or brain EEG brain studies, where when you're doing these different techniques, concentration is more like gamma is what you'll see in the brain. Mindfulness is more kind of like in this theta brainwave state. Alpha brainwave is where you see TM. It's the alpha 2 brainwave state. So you see the science that's behind it. I felt the experience. The science wasn't really my thing. Like I was on the spirituality, the spiritual aspect of trying to achieve these greater things that Christ promised. And so that's my journey with TM. And again, TM is something that I practice or that someone would practice twice a day. When you're first starting off, you practice for 20 minutes. And you're just kind of sitting effortlessly, naturally thinking sound.
So I've taught meditation and everybody says, well, I can't get my mind clear. That's the first thing everybody says. I can't meditate because I can't get my mind clear. And then, I was telling them, well, that's not even like part of it. Like you have to, the more you resist the mind, the more the mind wants to go. So you
Right.
have to just allow the mind and let it flow. And then all of a sudden you'll notice it stops.
Yes.
Yeah. But everybody says, I don't know if you hear the same thing, but I can't
All the time.
meditate all the time. Right.
That's the main thing. And it's not about shutting the mind off. Like it's, you have a, you can, if you want a dog to stay, you can either, chain it up or you can give it good food. But by giving it what it actually wants, it'll just kind of stay naturally. And so the mantra is a sound that is life promoting. It's a sound of nature. And by just giving it, instead of concentrating on the breath or concentrating on this one thing and trying to be forceful to shut the mind off, you just give the mind what it wants. It's almost like, you're reading a book or you're doing something and your favorite song comes on and automatically your mind goes to that song because that's what the mind wants is more happiness, more fulfillment. And that's what the mantra does. And when people do it the first time, it's like always the same result. It's kind of funny to see that all the time, but it's just not about like, it's a misconception of meditation. That's all.
So I know Deepak, like if you go to his center, he gives everybody their own personal mantra, right?
Yep.
So how do you help people with their mantra, like figure out what their mantra should be?
Same thing. It's a personalized mantra. Everyone has their own. And we first teach them the mantra, but we also teach them how to use it properly. Um, Again, Deepak learned all of this from Maharshi Mahesh Yogi.
Right.
And he couldn't use Maharshi's mantras because they're trademarked and, all the legal
He came
aspects
up with
about
his
it.
own. Yeah.
So he came up with his own. And I'm sure they're helpful. Like I didn't have a good experience when I did mine. It's called primordial sound meditation. Um, it was my first kind of time meditating.
Yeah.
Like even his 21-day meditations weren't about a mantra use.
Yeah.
But when I actually went to the center, I learned PSM, primordial sound meditation. I used it for maybe 2 or 3 months. I didn't see results from it. So after that, I actually started doing Kriya Yoga, which is a guy named Paramahansa Yogananda. He came over to America in like the 1920s or something like that and created an organization. I had better results with that, but that was more concentration based.
Mm.
Um, And it got to a point where even that got stagnant. And so I knew it was something that I was missing. And when I started TM, I started it at the university, by the way. As a part of your university degree, it's a consciousness-based education school. And so as part of the schooling, you meditate in the morning before class, you meditate at lunchtime, and then you meditate again after school.
Mm,
And it's all a part of your curriculum. And I mean, like literally in 1 year of consistent practice, because consistency is the key.
right.
Um, I felt like I was ready to be of service to others. I was still doing my degree program. I was only a year in, but I felt like it was time. And then I came back to Colorado. I decided that I would try to open up some type of wellness center. And then the spa just kind of naturally
Comes
attracted
to you.
itself.
Yep. And
Yep.
that's, people always make fun of the whole manifestation thing. And I have the same experience with you. I have a wellness center that literally like was going out of business, and they were like, do you want to buy this wellness center from us? I'm like, it's going out of business. Why the heck would I do that? Like, you guys are dumb. And then the landlord came to me and she was like, I'll reduce the rent if you'll just take over the space. You don't have to buy the business from them. And I ended up just buying the equipment from them,
Wow.
not a business, right? Like, I don't want a failing business, but I'll take your equipment that you did all this stuff on, right?
Right.
And then it went from literally before I opened doors, completely packed, full of like people who were like, I allow people to rent my space and do their activities and stuff in it.
Okay.
And I initially said, hell no. Like, why would I want this? And then like I kept being urged by the universe, like, no, you're supposed to take this. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want to manage people. I don't want to be involved in any of this stuff. But I didn't really have a choice. It just landed in my lap as the best thing ever, right? No effort. No effort.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that was your experience because that was like the same thing that happened with us. Um, I was actually planning on my father, like he helps me with everything. Like he's my rock, honestly. But he helped me to buy our house here in Colorado. This was in 2016. And then 2020 is when I came back to Colorado, 19 actually. I was 1 year into my degree program. He was like, well, let's just try to do it, whatever you can do. So I was going to build like some type of center inside of my house in the garage. And I went to the, building department. They were talking like this extreme amount of money just to go through the permitting and all these different things. So at that same time, I was going around to different wellness spaces in Colorado Springs, just kind of seeing what they were doing. And this one space was looking to sell. And I was like, man, what are you looking to sell for? And it was less than what I would have had to build out in my home. And I kind of started the process for that. This was in like November 2019. And we started getting the financing together. My dad was helping me out with that. And 2020 came around. I was in India. We went to India for the first time, me and my wife, for fertility treatments with Panchakarma. So this was my second time doing Panchakarma. We went for 6 weeks and then we ended up getting caught there for COVID. And
Mm.
I remember hearing something like this voice inside. I was telling my wife, like, I know we got this secured because we were going to purchase in March of 2020. But something's telling me, like, we're going to have to sell our house to do this. She's
Mm.
like, dude, that wasn't a good conversation, by the way. But March came around and COVID happened and nobody was giving out financing. And
Yep.
so this is what I was hearing internally to prepare for. And I'm glad I had that preparing for Ari, for my wife at that time. But we had to sell our house to buy this business. And it wasn't really profitable. It wasn't like losing money, but it wasn't profitable over the 4 years that they were open. We got it. We doubled revenues in like the first 6 months. We've been killing it ever since then. So that was kind of like my approach and how I got in and how nature was like nudging me and forcing me into it. But it's been the best decision for both of us. So
And when you're in alignment, things just come,
perfect.
right?
Perfect.
And I always
Yep.
tell people, if you have to push for it, it's not aligned with you. I mean,
Yep.
you do have to put, like, let's not act like, you just sit there and go, whoa, and like everything just comes like raining like stuff down on you. But really, when you're like sitting there and you're really fighting, fighting, fighting for something, let it go. And if it's meant to be, it'll come, right?
So true. I
Yeah.
mean, it was coming, and I felt like the universe was nature will kind of test you to see is this really what you
They
want?
do. Don't they send you other stuff to see, like, do you want this? You wanted this at
Really?
one time.
Yep. So even though I was getting like the effortlessness of it all kind of arising for me, it's like, okay, yeah, here it is. Do you really want it? And you're going to have to make some type of sacrifice to
Yeah.
show that want this to be your reality? And for us, it was like selling our house
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the pandemic to buy a business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That you really nobody could really go to at that time, right? Because everything's locked down, but you still believed and trusted and knew you had that inner voice to guide you. So
Yep.
you're a daddy. Do you have a boy, a girl?
I have a boy. His name's Noah. He'll
Noah.
be 16 months this week. And it's my first, like I'm 41 now. I couldn't imagine having a kid when I was 20, like most of my other, friends and people in the neighborhood, things like that. But it's been enjoyable. We have a full staff at the spa. So I'm like with him every day, all day. It's been enjoyable. It's been a blessing.
And tell me about being a father and how you plan on sharing your legacy with your child.
Yeah. Most importantly, the development of his consciousness first. Um, you know, Money and all the other things are, good that he'll have these, things that he can inherit and things like that. But to show him at a young age how to align himself, his body, his mind with these laws of nature so that his life is always, smooth path for him. Instead of having to relearn. Like I went through 12 years of relearning shit that wasn't good for me that I had to let go. That wasn't easy. Like it wasn't an easy process by far. But these will be habits. Like he sees me doing yoga every morning. He comes in, he wants to like be with me. And like he sees me doing these things. And so it'll be natural for him.
Mhm.
That's the biggest piece that I'm excited about. Because if I would have had this knowledge from day one, there's no telling I could already be doing these works of Christ, a greater thing. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Sometimes we need the sometimes we need the history though to make us appreciate it so that we feel like we want to share it. Because if it was something that you knew every single day of your life, you wouldn't know what other people are going through so that you want to share it to help them, right?
Okay.
Um, are you going to keep them out of the public schools? Because I think my personal opinion is that just basically dumbs everybody down. Like, I'm sorry if you're like part of that system, but it's the worst system.
I mean, they're pretty much creating workers. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
they're
creating a
creating employees,
workforce,
right?
employees. That's what school is. That definitely won't be a part of his lifestyle at
They're
all.
creating consumers, actually, right? More, it's like the consumers, the employee to go to work so they'll spend money and blah, blah, blah. They're creating consumers. So I think that is going to be a shift that we're going to see is that the people are not going to, as people shift, they're not going to want to send them to these traditional schools. Your college that you went to, the university you went to sounds amazing. I don't know, where is that at?
Very, very small town,
Mm.
Fairfield, Iowa, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Amazing curriculum, amazing school.
Yeah.
It changed my perception on education. Again, they call it consciousness-based education,
Yeah.
where you're putting consciousness first. And if you do that, then everything else will be added on to you. That's literally been my experience. And so I mean, ideally, I would like to create something like that. They have them for, you know, kids as well, starting off in preschool. Um, the nonprofit organization I'm looking to kind of get more of that involved into that education. And by the time he's 5, 4, whenever school, like those things start, ideally, that's where I would like him to be.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if I'm not at that place at that time, he'll be homeschooling until I am.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, tell us about your wellness center, and how people can go there, what they would expect to experience.
Yeah. So kind of from the beginning of that, there's these aspects that I've been talking about throughout the whole show that help me to get to this place and to attain the wellness center. Over the first 3 years, those weren't the things that I was offering. I felt at the time that I opened the business that it would not have been the best business decision
Mm.
to start off with those aspects because my thoughts were that people would more likely pay for relaxation than transformation,
Mm.
especially during the times that we were in that whole COVID aspect of things. And so we have things like flotation therapy or sensory deprivation things, infrared sauna. We have a salt cave or halo therapy, massage therapy, sound baths, foot baths, all the things like that that people can come and spend $300-$400 a day for 6 hours to come and, have a relaxation day, or they might just come for floats. They have float memberships, things like that. And I felt like that was the best approach starting off. And we did really well, and I just didn't think that people wanted to, spend that same amount of money to learn like TM that they have to now practice twice a day, that they have a commitment to do to make this transformation. And so over these 3 years, we're 4 years in now. We just went through our 4-year anniversary. It came to a point last year where I felt like, it's time to kind of make this transformation, like really bring in these transformative aspects that helped me to achieve this place. And so that's when I started like crafting the message, kind of working with public speaking, media coach, things like that to help craft the message and get those things out. So last year we opened up a Transcendental Meditation Center. We are in a complex in kind of the Broadmoor area of Colorado Springs. There's 2 resorts next to us, but there's multiple suites inside of this business complex. We have 4 of them. Luna Float Spa is in one. The Salt Cave is in one. Our Transcendental Meditation Center is in one. And then our nonprofit Enlightened Individuals is in one. Everything you can pretty much find on lunafloatspa.com. Like all of our information is on there because Luna is kind of like the primary business where all of our money comes in. And you can find out about all the transcendental meditation and other aspects from there. But it's been a great journey. Like we have a full staff. Life kind of flows as it is. We have created, people know us, they like us, they trust us now in the community. And that's when I felt like, okay. And it was kind of like seeing the shift because when I first opened, to be honest, like it was this fear of owning a business, brick and mortar, rent, all these different aspects that come along with being a business owner.
Well, and you sold your house. You don't want to sell your house for nothing. Yeah.
That, right? And like, is this what people want? And then you see people come in and they have one energy and then they leave and they're telling you how great their experience was and thank you for being here. And that builds a type of confidence and, drive to continue to expand and go deeper from there. And so we're holding retreats now and like really because the retreat was the big thing that did it for me, like going to that 10-day retreat with Chopra. And so now like, these are the things that you can come and experience, whether you're just, coming for relaxation or now transformation. Only thing we don't offer here is panchakarma. I'm putting together a retreat right now with one of the top Ayurvedic centers in the US. They're in Fairfield in Iowa called the Raj. And that's where I'll be doing kind of like retreats twice a year for people who want to experience the whole panchakarma aspect of things as well.
Are you ever going to do a retreat to India?
I do want to.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm ready for that one yet, if I'm honest. It's a 6-week commitment. I do it once a year myself. India is a different environment.
Yeah.
It's not like retreaty. Like it's for people who are seekers who really want to come experience some like deep cleansing. But the place that I go to, like their family has been doing this for over 1,000 years. They're enlightened beings. It's much more authentic than what you're going to experience in the US, but it's not like a 5-star like resort where you're gonna like. So I'm trying to see how.
Are we too wimpy to go? We're like, yeah, you're not getting a fluffy bed. I'm sorry.
That's what I don't know if people. It was kind of like that, like I just mentioned when I opened the spa. Like, are people ready for what this is? I'm kind of like in that same place right now with India. I would love to take a group of just seekers who aren't, materialistic or whatever that is, who are really looking because you're gonna like the panchakarma that you're getting there is 10 times more effective, efficient, better than what you're going to get here in the US. It's going to cost you 10 times less.
Yeah.
Like here in the US, you're paying $500 to $600 a day for these treatments. In India, at this place, you're going to pay like 125, and that's room and board. That's 3-4 treatments a day, where here you're only going to get one. That's, food, room, everything that's included. And so it's a much better experience for someone to go there. I would always recommend someone to go there first. But, for people who are just kind of starting off, or
Yeah, they're just putting their toe in the water.
yeah,
Yeah.
stick to America maybe first.
Well, I have to say, in my intuitive self, saw you doing retreats in India, and I can tell you, I think that there's lots of people who are ready.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of just my thoughts. So
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's actually people that I've recommended that's gone.
yeah,
Um, so yeah,
something
it's
to
just
think about.
some little blockage here. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the blockage is obviously it's hard to start new things. You don't
Yeah,
know if it's going to be accepted. But the beautiful thing is there's so many people ready.
I think that I believe that.
Yeah. And if they're not ready, they'll just cry home. Get on a flight and go home and start crying and going, that was a terrible, terrible thing. No, I don't think anybody would be guided to go and meet you and hear from you and be on a retreat with you if they weren't ready.
Yeah, I mean, for I just a quick story. Like my dad, again, he's not knowledgeable about most of these things. He trusts and believes in me. But the first time I went to India was 2020, like right before we got the spa. And I was there for 6 weeks. I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks, but I got caught there during COVID. Every day you do what's called post diagnosis for the Vaidya, the doctor, to check and see what's going on to give you a specific treatment that day. Like at the Chopra Center, I never even got post diagnosis one time. They like had you fill out a sheet to see if where your imbalances were, for
Right.
example.
Most people don't
But
know, but yeah.
so 3 weeks in, I get a phone call from my father. He's diagnosed with prostate cancer. This is what he
Mm.
told me that morning. And then I went over to the doctor to get my post check. And it was a lady. She mentioned that she's like, "Have you ever had your prostate checked before?" And I'm like, I'm gonna know, like, no, why are you asking me this? Like, my dad just told me this happened. And she's like, oh, that's what it is. And she had this smile on her face. She's like, oh, it's nothing you need to worry about. I'm just picking it up on your level of consciousness.
Mhm.
But you should tell your dad he should come in to kind of do these treatments. And so this is the type of people that you're working with in India compared to what you're going to be working with here in the US. And my dad came over, because he heard what I said, like, how could she know this? He came over maybe like a week and a half later, got his visa, went through some treatments, lost like a lot of weight. His cancer counts went down, his diabetes counts went down, his blood pressure counts went down. The doctor was surprised when he came back home. He wasn't able to finish the treatments. He was supposed to come for 6 weeks. He was only able to do like 2.5 because COVID started. But this, I mean, it's just a complete difference in what they're doing in India, especially with this family in general, and then what you're going to get here in the US. Ideally, anytime you're going through Panchakarma, you should be doing at least 23 days.
Mm.
Here to do 23 days is going to cost you a fortune. And it's not even going to be
The same.
the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And once again, which is why maybe it's time to consider that option.
thank you.
We appreciate you. I will make sure that all of your contact information is in the comments and people know how to get a hold of you for that retreat in India. No,
Okay. Yeah.
just make sure you let me know. I swear if I hear you go to and you don't let me know, I would be like sending like bad woo-woo your way. Just kidding. Just kidding. But no, I mean, I would love to know. So if you ever do that, please let me know.
Okay. I will.
Okay. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So grateful for you. Are you ready to take that next step and heal your triggers and understand your wounds? If so, I invite you to take my online course by going to barbiemoreno.com/course and let's get you started in your journey to healing.